welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. I have Mel Mason here with me today. How you doing, Mel?
I am fantastic, Cedric. Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say hello to you, whether you be on Roku TV, Apple TV, Android TV, Facebook, or YouTube. I just want to say thank you. Each and every episode that you tune into, it really means a lot to us here at America's Next Motivator. And just a couple rules of the house. I love it when you guys drop comments. I love it when you put emojis in the chat. It makes a big difference when you hit the like button, when you share the video with other people, and when you let people know that you're a part of our community here. So feel free to make comments, hit the like button, hit the share button, subscribe to us, and let's do something here. Mel, where are you from? Talk to us.
Let's see. Originally, I'm from Massachusetts, but I've lived in Southern California since 2002. I was in San Diego from 2002 to 2018, and I found heaven on earth in Palm Desert, California in 2018, and I don't think I'll ever leave.
Let's put the end in the beginning. What do you mean you found heaven on earth in Palm Desert, California? What's there? What does it feel like? And why do you call it heaven on earth?
It is just an absolute magical place to be. I'm someone who loves the desert and loves the heat. And I come from a small town community, a small town feel where I could walk around town and run into someone I know wherever I go. And it's also not a good thing growing up because you would get caught for things often, but that small town feel, and that's what that Palm Desert really has, is that small town feel. When I moved here, I got really involved in the community right away and just started meeting a lot of people, got involved with the city council, volunteered for a committee for the city, and just got super involved. And I felt like I was just picked and planted here, and the whole city just came around me and welcomed me. Because when I first landed here, I joined the Palm Desert Chamber, and I'm just a sole proprietor. I don't have a physical location. I would see my clients in their homes, and now I just strictly coach people. But at the time I was doing that. And so I was having my ribbon cutting ceremony that you have with a chamber. When you get a chamber membership, they announce you to the community. Well, I had the mayor of the city come to my ribbon cutting and present me with a wooden plaque from the city. And I'm just like, what do you mean the mayor's at my ribbon cutting?
Wow. Yeah.
What planet did I land on? And then him and his wife became great friends of mine. They're like my quasi parents. And I've just become so connected and friends with all the other council members. And just this city has just been so magical and just grabbed me and planted me here.
And you're talking about Palm Desert, California.
Yes, Southern California in the desert.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to, first of all, get someone else into the building and get into this conversation with us. She started on the East Coast, but found her ideal spot in the country on the West Coast. In the desert of all places. If that doesn't scream, take a look around, I don't know what does. Sometimes where you're meant to be is not where you are right now. And so be encouraged that you might need to go to another state, another city. You might need to go to another street in your own city. But movement is medicine. And that's what we're raising awareness about today on our show. Movement is medicine. And so can you talk to us? Now we're going to put the beginning at the beginning. Talk to us about your childhood, where you actually grew up. What was your childhood like?
Definitely a troubled and chaotic childhood. My parents, they separated when I was 4 years old. So I always was struggling with abandonment issues. And by the time I was, 8 years old, there was a lot of sexual abuse that had happened and emotional abuse. So early on, I dealt with a lot of trauma and loss. And I was pretty much a really cluttered, messy kid. I was someone where you couldn't walk in the floor in my room. It was completely covered with stuff. And it wasn't just the stuff that was accumulating. I was fine with having trash on the floor, and there was nothing on my radar that I needed to do anything about it, except when my mom would yell at me to clean my room, and that wouldn't do anything. So eventually she would get to the point where she would want to do something about it, and she would finally clean my room. But inevitably what would happen was it would just come right back. So I pretty much had a really cluttered, depressed and suicidal childhood growing up with all the trauma and loss that I went to. And it is through my relationship with God and God showing up in my life that I am even here able to speak to you today. My life is just a miracle, and everything that I went through was just done so that I could be able to share the experience so someone else can benefit.
This is absolutely huge. Absolutely huge. Yolanda, I see you out there. Hello. Emery, I see you out there. Hello. All of our folks who are tuning into this conversation. This is really big. You had clutter. There was abuse. There was attachment disorder. I want to unpack each of these things and figure out exactly how much we can actually relate to this stuff. What was going on in your family before you were born? Let's start there.
I think before I was born, my parents got married because they got pregnant with me. So it was kind of a marriage of necessity, not a marriage of love and, mutual respect. So it obviously didn't last very long. And they were both extremely young. I mean, I think about having a kid at like 21, and I'm just like, I could never imagine raising a kid at 21. I had a death wish. I couldn't even imagine the responsibility. So God bless my parents for even being able to put food in my mouth and keep a roof over my head. You know what I mean? But they were young. It was a rough start. But I truly believe that we choose our parents when we come into this life. We choose the experiences that we need to go through in order for our soul to evolve so that we can become one with God. We can get all the stuff out of the way that hinders that relationship with him.
There's a lot of people who go through life and they never have the idea that they're connected to the higher source of the world, of the universe. They have this idea that their connection to God is a long shot, but you realized that your connection to God was a birthright, and that you already had it before you could even figure out what was going on around you. And so I look forward into unpacking some of that perspective as we go along in this episode here today. Did you recall any of the impact of your parents splitting up? Do you feel that had any impact on your behaviors as a child?
Oh, of course. I mean, kids always think it's their fault. I did something to cause mommy and daddy to not be able to be together. So as a kid, you take it on. You take on the responsibility. You're that powerful that you can cause them to break up, and you take that on. And that's such a huge responsibility and guilt on a child that it's just too much to bear. So it gets, stuffed down and repressed and becomes inner clutter. And then it starts manifesting as external clutter, whether it's the physical stuff that accumulates in your environment, or using drugs and alcohol, porn addiction, needing to, change your appearance with cosmetic surgery and Botox, or binging and purging. However it manifests for you, it comes from the same inner stuff.
So I hear you talking about clutter. And when I think of clutter, I think of the TV show Hoarders.
Been on that show, actually.
Really? Wow. I think that's what I think of when I hear clutter. I think just stuff all over the house, to the point where it's an emergency. It's a mental emergency. It's a medical emergency, and it's a conversation that needs to be had. But you take it a step further and say, not only is there clutter outside for you to see, but there's clutter inside for you to feel or to discover. Talk to me about that dichotomy and how you have perspected that. Talk about it.
Yeah, so absolutely. So the truth of the matter is the outside is only a mirror of the inside. So hear that for a second. The outside only reflects back to you what's going on the inside. And so
never the other way around?
No, the outside is only the mirror of the inside.
Okay.
In order to create lasting change on the outside, you need to change the inside. Because here's the deal. Like I said, my mother would clean my room, and it would be nice and clean and organized, But because nothing changed inside of me, somebody else was just doing something to the outside. Over time, it just went right back to the way that it was. Why is that? I had the internal clutter, all the repressed emotions, the resentments, the fears, and the limiting beliefs from all of that trauma and loss blocking the flow. And that just then manifests externally. But really, in simplistic terms, what it really comes down to is clutter accumulates because of our avoidance, our unwillingness to look at it. We use drugs and alcohol to avoid what's uncomfortable. It all comes from avoidance, or a turning away from ourselves and a turning away from God ultimately. And so the answer is all in just turning towards yourself. It just requires you to become willing to be present with yourself and make the space for the divine to flow through you.
That's right. Do you feel that we come to earth cluttered?
Absolutely, because we don't just have one lifetime. We carry accumulations of limiting beliefs and patterns and all kinds of stuff. We have karmic stuff, genetic stuff that goes in down the genetic line all the way back to Adam and Eve. I mean, all the way, we've been incarnating over and over again for eons and eons. It's unfathomable.
Mm-hmm. And Lanice is here as well. She says, wow, that's good. Well said. Ani Riley says, if you can't run away from yourself, no matter where you go, you take it with you. Absolutely.
Yep. Wherever you go, there you are. John kept it in.
We're going to spend some time on this right here because this is a world healing conversation. There are some subject matters that get a response out of people of, well, why do I need to talk about that? Or, everything is not for everybody. I don't think we have a debate here as to whether or not we need to declutter. I think that it should be a soft fact, if not a hard fact, that you come to earth with a certain amount of clutter, a certain amount of, like you said, genetic trauma, things from your past. All these things, they go into you, because just think about it. Before you were born, the sperm was here and the egg was there. And before then, the sperm was here and the egg was there. And it goes back perpetually. And so you are like this brand new combination of all of those events. You are a case of events. You're a case of events. And to what extent do you realize that? Do you realize that when you're a child? Should a child learn that there's something that needs to be figured out, sorted out, and organized? Or do we just let kids run free? Because like in your instance, a kid runs free, clutter in your room leads to suicidal ideation, leads to self-abuse, poor perspective. At what point do we begin to process the clutter that we potentially came here with?
I mean, ultimately, it only happens when we're ready and not a moment before. No matter what age you are, there's no forcing anything. I wasn't interested in actually getting organized. It wasn't on my radar. I didn't think that there was anything out of the ordinary with the way that I lived until my mother yelled at me and wanted my room clean. And as a result of my life experience, through having all of that trauma already at such a young age, by the age of 15 years old, I experienced what I consider to be the dark night of my soul. I lost my older brother to suicide. Mm-hmm. And in the same moment, I was the one who discovered his body and inherited all of his belongings. Mm. So a 15-year-old kid who's already this, cluttered mess, in my room is a nightmare, then inherits all of her brother's stuff and has to make decisions about what's going to stay, who gets what I'm going to keep. So as you can imagine, it was almost the final nail in my coffin. I wasn't expected to make it to see my 18th birthday alive. Nobody thought it was going to happen. And I was actually kicked out of high school in my sophomore year, about a month after my brother committed suicide, for being a danger to myself and others. And they told me that I couldn't come back until I received intensive therapy. Now, what that looked like for a 15-year-old kid was going to live in a residential treatment center for adolescents for the next year and a half of my life. Mm-hmm. But while I was living there, I was introduced to mindfulness and yoga. And as a result of practicing mindfulness, just bringing my presence to my life, to my experience, turning towards myself, from doing that alone, I spontaneously went from this cluttered kid who was totally fine living in that environment to someone who could no longer tolerate it and had to start organizing my space and clearing my life. And what was happening that I realized later was that with all the internal clutter that I had, I was a vibrational match to the external clutter. We were the same vibration. And then every time I became willing to turn towards myself and be present, I started to raise my vibration. I started to make space inside. And eventually the gap got big enough that I was compelled to make the outside match the inside, because the outside is only a mirror of the inside. And so it happens vibrationally. Just like you become, people in your life, you grow close or you grow apart. You either become a closer vibrational match or you start becoming no longer a match and you vibrate away from each other.
That's
and
right.
So I became no longer a vibrational match to the clutter and went from this cluttered, messy kid to someone who could no longer tolerate it and actually loved creating order out of chaos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All from just turning towards myself. That's it.
We have 444,000 youth in the foster care system today, and many more children, young adults, and adults in the world who deal with a certain level of frailty. For you, it was clutter. For somebody else, it might be anger issues. It might be dependency or an unhealthy codependency. But what I love about your story so far is that you were able to turn it around. And part of the solution for you was meditation. And so I'm wondering if we need to spend more time using meditation in our societies, clear across the board. Do we need to understand that you are an apparatus that needs to be managed? I think that it's possible. So many of us, we're just walking around like, oh, la-di-da, I'm a person. Oh, la-di-da, I'm a human being. And it's like at some point, I just feel that we need to communicate to the world, which we're doing inside this hour on America's Next Motivator, that there's more to you than just a flesh vessel. You're more than a flesh vessel. You can get into your driver's seat, and that entails you taking a look inside yourself. Now, how do you begin to look inside and do that inner work without being seen as conceited, arrogant, narcissistic? How do you do it? How do you do it?
It's simply just making space in your life to actually take 5 minutes a day to stop focusing on everything going on out there and be willing to look within yourself and witness your own experience. What does it feel like to be me today? What does it feel like to be in my body? What am I noticing in my body? Is there tension? Is there tingling? Am I hungry? Am I feeling sadness? Am I feeling anger? Is my neck aching? Whatever's coming up, learning to be the witness of your experience without any judgment and without changing anything, simply allowing yourself to be exactly as you are. It's actually not meditating. I like to avoid that word because when people hear the word meditation, they automatically think they need to quiet their mind down. Mm-hmm. And this is different in the sense that your only job is to be the witness of your experience. You're like a reporter. It's like, oh, tingling sensation. Oh, mind is racing. Oh, sadness feeling. Not I'm sad. There's a feeling of sadness. It's not who you are. It's just a feeling. It's just energy. Just making a mental note and acknowledging everything that shows up. And by acknowledging everything that shows up, it gets to move freely through you. It doesn't get stuck. Mm-hmm. And when you can be in that allowing is where you create the space inside to start manifesting outside.
We've got to be a medium at some point in our lives, a conductor as well of energy. As we know, energy can't be created nor destroyed, only transferred. And so at some point we have to become people who transfer energy, just keep it moving through, as opposed to holding on to a piece of energy, which might be an experience, holding on to it and allowing it to do something to you. So if you were abused, for example, we have to be able to process that experience and then move it through. Don't hold on to the abuse, because as Mel said, your constant remembrance of the abuse will put your frequency at abuse. And then the next thing you know, your environment will reflect abuse. And so we have to be the type of people who transmute the energy. Okay, it came. We get that. Now let's process it through and move it along. Each and every one of us has the capability of doing that. And that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. There's a phrase out there. Oh, he's feeling himself. Oh, she's feeling herself. It sounds like in this conversation, you do need to feel yourself. You need to feel yourself out, and you need to be doing it with an objective perspective.
You need to have a full cup in order to be able to give. I mean, when you're on an airplane, what do they tell you to do if the oxygen mask falls down? Put it on your kid first? No, you got to put it on you first, or you'll be dead. You can't help anybody if you don't have any oxygen. So your own cup has to be full. You have to know how to fill your own cup and be able to receive in order to be able to give.
Mm-hmm. When you begin to look inward instead of outward, I think that you become a lot more confident about the world that you live in. The pressure on your shoulders to figure everything out must get a whole lot lighter. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the more and more you practice being present with your experience, the more and more you're allowing the moment to be, and you're loosening your grip, and things can just flow. And when you're in the flow, that's when abundance and happiness can come more into your life. You stop resisting it, because really, there's always this divine flow of abundance. Just imagine that God is raining money down on you, right? Mm-hmm. But here's the deal. This money is raining down on us all the time because the universe is abundant. It's continuously regenerating. But we're too busy avoiding what's uncomfortable. So our hands are pushing away what's uncomfortable and hanging on to what feels good. And so in both of those instances, our hands are occupied. They're not open to receive all that abundance coming to us. And that's why it's so important to be in the state of allowing, to turn your attention towards yourself and allow yourself to be exactly as you are. Then you can receive the bounty of God.
Does this paradigm that you're talking about, because it's not a new paradigm, but it's different than what so many people are doing. Does it make people more capable of developing vision in their life?
Absolutely, because here's the bottom line, is that really the truth of the matter is clutter is anything that keeps you from your connection to spirit, being one with God, ultimately. Like, that's the deeper piece. I mean, this stuff keeps you from abundance and happiness, but ultimately it blocks you from that connection to God. So if you're blocked off, you're not fully connected, so you don't have access to that divine abundance and have that peace. When you have that connection, you just have this peace and knowing over you that no matter what's going on, this whole chaoticness with all the COVID stuff going on that's been happening this past year, there has been no time where I've been in a state of fear and worrying about getting COVID and dying. Like, I am just in total faith and trust in my relationship with God, that you don't go into a place of fear. There's just this knowing that all is well. And even if I were to contract COVID, that everything would be all right and everything is necessary. So it just removes the fear and gives you that ultimate peace.
Okay. Let's make this an even more victorious moment for our public and connect a few dots. So we talked about the clutter. You come with some clutter, but then on top of that, you might literally start cluttering your environment. And once you start to declutter by looking inside and putting things where they really go, listening to yourself objectively, and moving bad energy away, and keeping what you need in order to thrive, then you become able to develop vision. Yeah. So now we went from clutter to decluttering by working on inner self, to now you're developing a vision. Once you begin to develop vision, does that make you more prone to happiness?
I think when we have clarity of where we're going, then it automatically makes us feel joy because we have that clarity. It's when we feel uncertain or unsure that we have doubt that causes suffering. But when we have clarity about where we're going, I mean, there could only be peace because we're clear.
Right. Okay, everybody. So I hope you're getting this connection that clutter leads to unhappiness, and clarity leads to happiness.
Clutter just blocks the flow of happiness. It just gets in the way.
That's right.
Yeah,
This is so
it's our
important.
responsibility. Like I look at it this way. It's like we didn't come here to just like you were saying at the beginning, just doop to do. Here I am. I'm a human. I get to have all these experiences being a human. Like we actually came here with a purpose. Like every single one of us is necessary. We're all a piece of the puzzle, and we all are responsible to do our own work of removing the clutter, removing anything that gets in the way of us having a direct connection to God, to having that relationship with God, and to allow that divine flow of abundance to flow through us, because it's when that happens that we can be at peace ourselves, and that's the only way we're going to have peace on earth. We have to be at peace ourselves. You must be the change you wish to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a comment in the building. Lanice Lee says, I connect with you both. Amen. And we appreciate you being here tonight, Lanice. Ladies and gentlemen, if you just tuned in, we're talking to Mel Mason. She has figured out a very, very important problem that we deal with in our societies, and that is how to deal with the clutter, what the clutter represents, and where we can go once we deal with it. We can't continue to chase our tails as humanity. We can't continue to miss the fundamental idea that you have to be within or be without. And so don't let any of this go over your heads. We've got to sometimes do something a little bit different, do something new in order to get the greatest results. And the greatest result is unity. We're going to go to a break now. We'll be right back. Everybody, don't go anywhere. You might have a few seconds to grab some water, but definitely be back after the break. America's Next Motivator, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator, hosted by me, Cedric Riley, sponsored by the Pride Empowerment Network and our viewership. And we're back. Mel, how you feeling out there?
Fantastic. This is great.
Absolutely. We got a couple comments in the building. Lanice is really rocking with us tonight. And Emery Curry said, cleanliness is next to godliness.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yep. I want to thank you for this conversation that we're having this evening. And I personally believe that this is the work of God right here. Figuring out this mechanism is the work of God. This is God's work. Figuring out this mechanism. So many of us, and I was one of them. Obviously, you were one of them. We miss the proper orientation right out the gate, because you jump off the porch and immediately you're immersed in a world that you're trying to figure out. People don't sit you down and say, hey, you are a galaxy. You are a member of the universe that needs to be figured out. I don't know that we have that. And so those types of conversations need to be had, ladies and gentlemen. That's my daughter back there. She's woke, and so she wants to be a part of this episode. If you hear her, all right, love her to pieces. But I don't know that we have the conversations of you are a small world. You are a galaxy. You are a big deal. And you've got to figure that out in order for you to know how to orient yourself around the world. So many of us, we just jump off the porch and go out there and try to figure it out. We get intimidated. We get afraid, you know. And so, yes, cleanliness is next to godliness. And we got to figure out this mechanism right here. Inside leads to the outside. Got to figure that out.
And it's super simple. I mean, what's so funny is that I tell my clients, I give you the keys to the kingdom in the first conversation. If you just do this one piece and learn how to be present for your experience and turn your attention within instead of without, that's where the magic lies. Like, you remember I said, like, I was the cluttered kid who was fine living that way. It wasn't on my radar to do anything about it. And doing this practice of turning within and turning my attention towards myself instead of away is where everything changed. That's where the magic happened. I mean, I basically got organized from the inside out by accident.
When did you ever hear a motivational speaker or a motivational seminar or anything like that in your childhood?
I don't know if it was in my early childhood. I think it was probably, I first started reading some of my most motivational books in my teens. It wasn't till when I got out of that residential treatment center. I was about 17, I think, when my mind got expanded into spirituality and reading other things and just started taking off.
Sure. So that's what I want to raise awareness about tonight, is that sometimes, I think most times, we wait far too long to have the valuable conversations about what we are spiritually. I think if you're 17 and you've already been on the brink of suicide, you've already been traumatized by life experience, you're already in a residential treatment center, I think 17 is a bit late for you to have this spiritual conversation and this spiritual opportunity to make your life a better thing.
Well, that was like, actually, I mean, my spiritual connection to God started way younger, but like, I didn't have any other like mentors and gurus that came into my life. But I was really actually blessed at about the age of 5 years old, around the time that my parents separated. I actually had one of the most profound experiences of my life, where I was standing outside with my best friend at the time, and her and her dad were getting ready to go for a motorcycle ride. And I'm just standing outside. We're just having a conversation, and I'm like 5 or 6 years old. And all of a sudden, we're just having this conversation. They're getting ready to go. And this knowing comes over me that we are all brothers and sisters because we come from the same Father. Never been to church. My parents don't go to church, wasn't brought up in it. Just this knowing came over me, and my life has been walking with God ever since. Plenty of times turned my back on him and tried to do it on my own. Hasn't been, here you go, you have the reins the whole time. But I've had this really deep connection, and my life has been divinely guided from that moment, or way before that moment. But I was conscious of my relationship with God from that moment.
Sure. Okay. Now, as you graduated high school, what were your thoughts about the world? What did you think was next for you?
Honestly, graduating high school, it was still pretty dark and bleak for me. I was still not 100% wanting to be here on the planet yet. Was really struggling. It was still dark time for me. Eventually, it got to a point where I wanted to be here in life. But when I first got out of there, I was 17 years old. And, they say when you go into a, like when you live in an institution, when you become institutionalized, when you leave the institution, you kind of go right back to where you were before you went in. There's this regression before you come forward. And so I graduated from the treatment program and was doing all this work where the external clutter was clearing up in the physical space, but it was manifesting in another way. I was addicted to crack cocaine. I was doing crack cocaine at 17 years old. So it just started to manifest in a different way as it, as I continued to work through it. And so my late teens were definitely really troubled and marked with a lot of struggle with addiction through my teens. Yeah, for sure.
And so when you don't do the spiritual work, if it's not one thing, it's another. Right. And this is where I feel that you connect to so many thousands of people across America today, because we've all had, or we all still do have, that one thing that is the chink in our armor. It's our flaw. We all have this flaw that needs to be dealt with. And unfortunately, some people skate through without ever having to deal with their flaw. But I feel like the most helpful of us in humanity have discovered their flaw and they've dealt with it.
I
Now,
think the ones that skate through miss out. I mean, in
yeah,
order to really fully get the most out of what we came here for, like we're human. Like
mhm,
you come in with all kinds of stuff. We're not clear, pure channels for source energy. Our job is to make it that way, to remove the draw so that spirit can inhabit our bodies. And that has all these, low frequency things stir up, all these things that we come in with that we have to overcome, our challenges each lifetime. There's always plenty of them. None of us get out of life unscathed. It's just whether or not we actually choose to do the work or not,
mhm,
and to
mhm.
the capacity that you get to experience joy.
Who helped you? Who helped you? And what was the experience like for you to transition into really helping yourself, dealing with yourself? Because as a 17-year-old dealing with a drug addiction, it must have been really tough to turn things around.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, first and foremost, my source of strength is always my relationship with God. First and foremost, I mean, I wake up every day, and my prayer is to just be of use. I'm alive beyond, because not of my own devices. I would have been dead at least 3 times over if I was left to my own devices. So I trust and know that there's a higher plan for me, and I know that I'm down at this really low altitude, and God's vision is much higher than mine. So I turn it over and just say, I suit up and show up. Just let me be of use for you today. And then everything else falls into place. But overcoming that, it's, there's no one defining factor in my life, because there's just been so much. There was struggles with drugs and alcohol. And then it was going through this journey of figuring out how I was going to share my message and what that was going to look like, knowing that my experience was meant to help others. And, first it starts off as energy healing, and then taking yoga teacher training, and leads on this wild and hairy path. But, there was never any one specific moment that it shifted. It's been this ongoing moments of awakening where I wake up and, there's these things that you become aware of that you let go of. And then it's more layers of the youngins show up growing on. And then it's, there are times where, there was a period in my life where, I'd done all this work and gotten physically clutter free and had my addiction under control. I was sober. I was, in recovery. And then I got into a relationship where I became completely codependent and shut my light down for somebody else, and lived that way for another 6 years before I started putting myself first again and putting these practices back into place again, where I basically shut my light down and stopped connecting to God because my light shined too bright for this person, until I got to the point where I wanted to kill myself again because I was denying my birthright and needing to make that decision again.
Hold on. Let's take a moment to respect the fact that we have lights. We have lights to share with one another. That those lights are meant to be shown, and we've got to normalize appreciating others' light. I've got to appreciate your star power. You've got to appreciate mine. I think the world becomes a better, brighter place when we do that. And
we
so
all need to shine our lights. That's our job.
That's right. That's absolutely right. I'm thinking about the people out there who might be thinking, she's talking about being able to hear spirituality, being able to hear what God is telling her to do, being able to declutter her life. And I'm not hearing any of that stuff in my life. And I'm wondering, how do we help the people who can't hear it? They don't hear the internal messaging. They don't, they're not getting messages from the universe, and they don't understand their connection with God. What do we say to them tonight?
The most important thing you can do is continue to plant seeds, because you're not responsible for when someone wakes up. Your only job is to plant the seeds and know that everything is necessary. And for each person, it unfolds differently, and they may not get it this time around.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to, we're not in control. It's not our job to figure out their path. Like, we have to our job is to plant the seeds. And if we get an opportunity to water those seeds and fertilize them and help them grow, great. But all we can do is plant seeds and lead by example. We have to do our own work. And by doing our own work and raising our own vibration, we make it that much easier for the people around us to do theirs. So the best way for you to help anybody that's not hearing and connecting and getting it is to do your own work to make it possible for them to have that ability to be able to receive.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever get to the point where you were able to manage your light? You know how to shine it. You know how to make other people feel comfortable enough to enjoy it with you. Did you ever learn how to manage that light? Do we ever learn how to manage the light?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it was just, in a place where I was coming from. I was newly sober. I was extremely codependent and suffered from severe separation anxiety due to all the trauma I had been through and the abandonment of losing my brother and then having my parents separate. And even after my parents separated, my mother abandoned me repeatedly. So I had severe separation anxiety and codependency when I got into that relationship, and became willing to shut my light down. And it eventually got to a point where you couldn't tolerate it anymore. I mean, it took a long time for it to get that way, but it eventually gets to a point where, just like the vibrational frequency between me and the clutter got different, it was like, it got to a point where I needed to take action. And it was either going to be, I was going to end my life in that moment, or I was going to do whatever it took to experience happiness and abundance in every area of my life, because I knew it was my birthright. Once I made that decision to put my happiness first, I haven't looked back. Like, my happiness has to be number one, because if I'm not happy and feeling at peace inside myself, I can't help you. I can't do my work on this planet.
Let's shake the room up a little bit.
Let's shake them up.
What does it mean to turn your light down, to dim your light? What does that mean?
I basically stopped praying, stopped communicating with God, stopped reading anything spiritual, and denied that part of myself. I turned myself away from myself. I avoided myself. I became unwilling to look at that part of myself, because I knew that if I let my light shine, this person that I was attached to, that I was in love with, that I married, was going to leave. And I had abandonment issues. I would do anything in my power to keep that relationship from ending. So I was willing to sacrifice myself for that.
If you keep praying, we're going to break up. If you keep on having a spiritual answer for the questions in your life, we're going to break up. If you keep on being extremely positive, every time I see you, you're being positive, we're going to break up. Is that what you're talking about?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Is there a such thing as toxic positivity?
Contagious positivity. I don't know about toxic, but sure is contagious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It does one of two things. Here's the deal, is because it's all vibrational, the person who is not the match either is forced to rise up to meet you and match your vibration in order to stay around you, or they pull you down. So that's why people try to pull you down to their level, and misery loves company, because it's easier to pull you down to their vibration than it is to come up to yours to meet you. That requires a lot of effort and work. That's why I knew, in making the decision to put my happiness first, that my marriage would eventually end, because she wouldn't come along. It took another 6 years for that to happen, or however many long, but it did eventually. We did vibrate out of each other's lives.
We are vibrational people, everybody, and we have to accept that. We consist of energy.
We are energy.
We are energy. It's the reason why we rest, we rejuvenate, we heal, we enjoy. All these things are vibrational, and we've got to realize that, hey, sometimes I need to, all the time, raise my vibration. Be encouraged to raise your vibration. If this is a new vocabulary word for you tonight, take it and incorporate it. Use it. My vibration, it needs to be raised. We're vibrational. We got a couple comments in the building. Emery Curry said, good question. Lenice Lee has been with us all night. She says, yes, right? How much would our world become a better place if we all accepted the fact that we are vibrational. What if I took accountability for the fact that I'm vibrating at about 30, units, 30 human units, where I should be vibrating at about 90, 98, 100 human units. And this always comes back to common language, because we have another phrase. We say, are you keeping it 100? Are you keeping it 100? And there's more to it than just being a slang phrase, any ebonic phrase. There's more to it than that. When you talk about 100, you're talking about the vibration. There is a call in our lives to keep it 100. Gotta do that. Okay, so now once you began to raise your vibration, you were able to rise up out of crack addiction. You were able to rise up out of abusive relationships. You were able to rise up out of the clutter in your heart and in your home. Is that right, or am I wrong?
Yeah, but just know that it doesn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen quickly. I mean, it's been gradual over years.
That's right. How long did it take?
Well, I mean, I struggled with drug addiction until 2004. I went from, crack cocaine when I was 17 to, in my 20s, being addicted to crystal meth and homeless in San Diego, arrested, looking at 6 years in prison over my head.
Mm-hmm. When you experience that type of opening of your mind, that sort of even artificial opening of your consciousness, did you get anything from that side, if you will, that you were able to bring back over to this side of sobriety that you carry with you today?
Just trusting the process and allowing it to be exactly as it needs to be. There's no forcing anything. Just like you can't, you have the friend or family member in your life that's the addict or the alcoholic, and you want them to stop. And until they're done, there's nothing you can do about it. They have to be done. And it's just allowing the process to take what it takes, because it takes what it takes. Just like the clutter didn't accumulate overnight, it doesn't go away overnight. It's going to take what it takes for you to get through it all. No magic wand waved it there. No magic wand will take it away. It takes what it takes. So that's the biggest lesson, is just it takes what it takes.
It took years. It took dedication.
Yeah.
It took honesty, transparency. What do you say? What do you say to people who are on that side of the yard tonight? They're addicted one way or another. They might be dealing with the clutter, just like you talked about. They might be in an abusive relationship, and they're listening tonight. What do you say to them?
Just trust that if you turn it over and just turn your life over to the power that created you, and trust, and you want something different, it will change. I struggled for years. Like, I would read all these spiritual books, and every time I'd meet all these criteria, and then it'd be refrain from the heedless use of intoxicants. And I just couldn't get off the drugs, and I couldn't get off the drugs, and I couldn't get off the drugs, but I wanted to. It just wasn't time yet. So, if you have the desire in your heart, just keep having that desire in your heart and keep moving forward, and know that it takes what it takes, but just keep praying and keep trusting, and things will open up for you.
That's right.
I didn't want to actually get sober either. I mean, I got arrested. I was looking at 6 years in prison. I still had a death wish at a point. I still didn't care if I lived or died. Even though, I had cleared a lot of the physical clutter, there was still a lot of stuff going on. Why I was still running from myself with drugs and alcohol, even though I was, I had learned these practices. Like, I learned the practices and got myself free from clutter physically. But then I just turned to drugs and alcohol and kept avoiding myself more. And so instead of the clutter coming back, I just wound up doing more drugs and alcohol and trying different things. And I wasn't wanting to get sober. And I even went into treatment just to get probation off my back, and had all intentions of doing the program and getting out and getting high again. But while I was in the program, because I was still struggling and having this relationship with God, and still wanting to be what I was called to be, but struggling with this addiction, by turning it over, something shifted by being there. And I actually wanted to live for the first time in a long time. And once I decided that, I, just reestablished my connection, and knew that the only way for me to heal and help others is to share my experience. And so it started with sharing my story in AA meetings and NA meetings, and eventually starting my own business and sharing my experience through what I do with my clients.
You became a coach, a mentor, a service provider to others, after all. Talk about the business you do today.
I'm known as the clutter expert. So what I really help people do is clear the clutter and gain clarity in every area of their lives so they can experience happiness and abundance, because that's our birthright.
That's right.
That's ultimately what I do, but I do it through coaching my clients, and I teach workshops online, and I've written a book. Yeah.
What's the name of your book?
Freedom from Clutter, the guaranteed foolproof step-by-step process to remove the stuff that's weighing you down. And you can get the full length PDF of it for free if you just go to freegiftfrommel.com. I don't want you to take the clutter and have the physical book. You can buy the physical book on my website if you want. If you go to decluttering-spaces.com, you'll get an autographed copy of the book personalized to you. But if you don't want the physical clutter and you want the digital version immediately, you can go to freegiftfrommel.com and download the book now.
You are a people's champion. A people's champion. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for her in the chat. Put some fire emojis, some of those hands going like this, all those types of hands and stuff like that. Put that in the chat for her, because she's an overcomer. I see so many of us in your story. The realities of drugs, alcohol, addiction, not even wanting to live, not even wanting to be here, to turning that around. Let's go, everybody. I feel like coming through the screen on y'all. Turning it around and being here for others. This is what life is all about. This is what it's all about. Not just doing the 180 for yourself, but doing the 180 and coming back into rooms full of other people and letting them know, hey, I've been there. Let me coach you off that ledge. Let me teach you how to get off that ledge. Let me write something for you that you can read your way off of that ledge. For a long time, I felt like we have too many people falling off the ledge to their death. And I know, don't be so big-headed that you think everybody can be saved. I get that. But I still think there is a substantial percentage of people who could be saved if we make the attempt to share a message with them. We've got to fill those shoes. Somebody's got to feel responsible for sharing a message that could help get somebody off the ledge. We know we're not going to share and save everybody. But I would love it if people could hear your story tonight. Be encouraged out there, everybody. One, to declutter your heart, declutter your life. But then be encouraged to share your story. Stop by here on America's Next Motivator and share your story the way Mel is doing tonight. Share your story with your family members. If you don't do anything else, I want you to go get in that mirror and share your own story with yourself. Mel, what is the legacy that you'd like to leave behind?
My legacy that I want to leave behind is I want peace on earth. And I know that the only way to have that is to do the work ourselves. We all came onto this planet with a purpose. Not any one of us is extra or an accident. We're all key pieces of the puzzle, and we're all necessary. It is our responsibility to do our own work so that we can be at peace and experience the happiness and joy that are our birthright and the abundance. And so do your own work. If you want peace on earth, you have to do your own work. It starts from within. The clutter is anything that keeps you from experiencing happiness and abundance in every area of your life and being connected to God.
Is there anyone who is excluded from doing their own work?
No. It's all necessary. If you're a human who breathes air, has a heartbeat, lungs, it applies to you.
Because, so many of us are crafty at excluding ourselves. This whole conversation doesn't apply to me because I'm XYZ. You're saying that everyone is capable of doing their own work.
Yes, it's a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
No one can do it for you.
Sometimes it seems like we're saying things that have already been said, But I think that we're saying something that's extremely relevant today. I don't think that you can say it enough times. I don't think that you can put it enough ways until we all get it on earth that there is work that we need to do. Everybody needs to do the work of uncluttering themselves. No one is excluded from that.
No.
And what's interesting is no matter how far back you go, somebody was saying this. Somebody was saying this. No matter, I mean, you could pick a decade and just look.
Yep.
Somebody has been saying this all along. Go ahead.
Yeah, they say no teacher can teach us anything new. They can only help us remember what we've always known.
Mm-hmm. Is it possible for us to remember a version of ourselves that was majestic?
Absolutely. I think 100%. We all have that capability.
All right.
We are the bridge between heaven and earth. So
right.
We are blessed to be able to dwell in the physical and access the spiritual. So we are merging heaven and earth within ourselves. We have access to all of it. That's what makes us different from animals, is they don't have that access that we do.
That's right. Everybody be encouraged to not only exercise your body, but exercise your spirit. I've got 3 questions for you. I need them answered in 16 seconds. The first, what is survival to you?
Life without God, desperation.
What is success to you?
Life with God, knowing that everything is happening exactly as it needs to.
What is greatness to you?
Being the best version of yourself so that God can do his work through you, and being able to remove any interference so that you can have all the financial abundance and all the happiness to be able to do God's work on the planet. Because in able to do God's work, you need to be able to have money. So we need to clear the way to be millionaires and do God's work.
Mel Mason, I want to let you know, I've listened to your story today. We've heard you. I love the way that you overcame adversity. I'm giving you your respect today. Ladies and gentlemen, put your crown emojis into the chat. We're giving you a crown today while you're still alive to receive it. We're giving you a crown today. We're letting you know, letting the world know that you, Mel Mason, you are America's next motivator.
Thanks for having me, Cedric. It's been an honor to be here and get an opportunity to share my story.
Absolutely.
If it helps one person, that's all that matters.
Oh, you helped a lot of people. Those crowns are yours. Thanks for stopping by tonight, all right?
All right. Thanks so much, Cedric.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Each and every episode of America's Next Motivator is going to have something here for you. All you got to do, just like you did tonight, stop by and pick it up.